Bienvenido. If you are able, please share this show with a friend. Leave us a nice review on the podcast player of your choice, or if you'd like to support us financially, sign up for the companion podcast, The St. Nicholas Project, on Gum Road. All these things really help us out. Namaste.
Hello, friend. The Mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Oh, the pirates, yes, they're by. So that the merchant ships, minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, but my hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop at a time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We've got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had, redemption songs. Have no fear for atomic energy. Bob Marley knew what was up.
I won't be afraid.
He knew it was fake. Bob Marley was woke. He really did.
If anybody was woke, I think Bob Marley qualifies.
If anybody has ever been woke, it was Bob Marley, and he knew all about this stuff. I don't think he died of toe cancer or whatever it was.
Toe cancer? It's ridiculous.
They say he got like a melanoma on his toe.
It's funny you opened with Marley. One of our listeners sent me a song recommendation for Ziggy Marley, See Them Fake Leaders.
See, listen here. In the Middle Ages, this is a quote. In the Middle Ages, people believed the earth was flat, for which they at least had the evidence of their senses. We believe it to be round, not because as many as 1% of us could give the physical reasons for so quaint a belief, but because modern science has convinced us that nothing that is obvious is true, and that everything that is magical, improbable, extraordinary, gigantic, microscopic, heartless, or outrageous is scientific. George Bernard Shaw said that.
That's a great quote.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Sumo, my friend.
Today we have to do it.
What are we going to do?
I had to open with Marley because he knew this stuff. And I don't... Listen. If you want to get gold, what do you got to do?
You got to dig.
You got to dig. And you may have to dig through a lot of dirt and stuff you don't want. Right?
Maybe.
Like there's a lot of You have to dig in a lot of places, and there's a lot of dirt and a lot of rock and and between you and the vein of gold, right? I mean,
yeah, it can get gnarly.
Truth is similar. See, I think truth is sort of like gold, better than gold, really. But to find truth, sometimes, find nuggets of truth, you have to dig, and sometimes you have to do exploratory digging. Sometimes, you're drilling for oil, you have to do some exploratory drilling for oil, and you may not always come up with anything, and sometimes you have to dig in places you don't really want to, or you think may not be profitable. But same here. So, in tonight's show, we finally have to address the elephant in the room, or maybe the turtle in the sky, about the flat earth. But understand, listener, that I am not, in this show, advocating for the flat earth. I am not necessarily a flat earther. I am not. I hope that I will present it in such a way that you will not know what I am, and that you will not be, because I'm gonna throw out some stuff today when we get into the flat earth portion that is you're gonna come away from it, right? I'm not saying that you're gonna come away from it being a flat earther, but you're gonna come away from it going, I don't know as much as I thought I did. He asked some very simple questions that I couldn't answer. And that unsettles me. It unsettles me a bit that I couldn't answer. That's what you're going to feel like, I hope. At the end of and then you're going to say, what else do I also do that with? Maybe most things. Maybe my whole worldview is just a shanty town built on top of a shifting sand of a lie. That someone else gave me, and I just believe, and I've never really thought about it. I've never really thought about the nuances of these questions. And I hope that I hope that, like, I'm gonna give some flat earth problems that and to some of them, I know the answers. Like the quote unquote acceptable answer and the quote unquote real answer. And some of them I don't, but I hope that you can't tell the difference. And I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. I think this is how it should be. I hope every show the listener feels like they are sitting on the fence between, like, falling off to one side into profound knowledge and the other side into stupid dum-dum headland.
I feel that way pretty much all the time.
That's what I'm going for here. We're going to be trying to straddle that line. But first, we're going to talk about a few other things. I want to talk about Vaporwave. How do you feel about Vaporwave?
Generally positive.
Generally positive? I do too. And I think that people are saying that it's dead and it's over, but musical arts, they always say that far before it is true.
Feeling like you're flying through the landscape of the movie Tron will never be old or dead.
It's never old or dead. But see, that's only just one genre of it. Does that make sense? Like, because there's so many. So Vaporwave, if you're not familiar, and I'm sure all of our listeners are familiar, is like, I would describe it as a what? It's a music based on nostalgia.
Yep, 90s.
For the 80s and 90s. I'd say mostly the 90s. Some of the 80s, and then a little tiny bit of the early 2000s.
When was The Last Starfighter? I feel like that was the first big movie that captured that vibe.
Yeah, The Last Starfighter. The Last Starfighter had to be like, what, 80? No, earlier.
I think it was mid to late 80s.
I thought it was earlier, but you're probably right.
I'll look it up.
I never get movies. I never get movies correct. Their time frames. But
1984.
Oh, looky there. I was gonna say 83.
You were close.
I was close. So, and it has with it though. It's like this. Imagine The Last Starfighter. Yes. And then, like, maybe Windows 96.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to say things, and this is going to be Vaporwave for you. So there's, like, The Last Starfighter, Windows 96, a palm tree,
mm-hmm.
neon.
Yep. Hypercolor.
Hypercolor, a Tamagotchi, a Super Nintendo.
Reebok pumps sneakers.
Yeah, absolutely. The inside of an old Pizza Hut.
Yeah, man.
The inside of an old Pizza Hut and the little glasses that were red and see-through that everyone remembers.
Cosmic bowling.
Cosmic bowling. Yes. Cosmic bowling. Yeah, cosmic bowling. Playing the Game Boy in traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Playing the Game Boy in traffic.
Yep.
It's this amalgamation of, but see, it's not just the 90s and 80s. It's the 80s and 90s through the lens of childhood.
Yeah.
And coming of age.
Dreaming about owning a hoverboard.
Dreaming about it's not vaporwave is not a genre spawn from someone that went through the 80s and 90s in like their 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Or even their 30s. It's early 20s, teens, and childhood. And you take all of those sort of vague memories and you sort of smoosh them into a ball. Like I said, like Game Boy in traffic.
Yeah.
Like that's like, you remember being a little kid and you're on a road trip and you're stuck in traffic and you're playing a Game Boy at night in the backseat. And that's a shared memory of the millennial generation, I would say, that everyone has.
Mm-hmm.
That they can all relate to and it's a lot of that. And it's hyper focused on the material culture, like products and logos and businesses that, like I said, the inside of a Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
From 1994. Right, you remember that? Everyone listening knows exactly. They can instantly transport themselves into a Pizza Hut in their minds in 1994, and they know exactly what that would feel like, right? And maybe the sound of the boot up of a modem on a dial-up modem.
Yeah, man.
Right, like all of these things. It's like hyper focused on the material culture of the time, like the technological material culture of the time, and it has art associated with it, like artwork. Like there's actually people there's the vaporwave music, but then there's also like, I'm not sure what you would call it. It's still sometimes called vaporwave, even though it's drawings and artwork, which is like, it has all these subgenres. It's sort of like metal has spawned into 1,000 subgenres.
Yeah, it's like the stuff that you had on the art you had on your Trapper Keeper.
Yeah, like the art you had on your Trapper Keeper. Or for the ladies on your what was those?
Lisa Frank notebook.
I was gonna say Anne Frank, but that goes in a different direction.
Yes, yeah.
The Lisa Frank notebooks, right? Everyone, and so that artwork. But there's been these artists, and they become very. I mean, they're big artists now. I mean, they make a living doing this. People buy their prints, and they're like, there's this one guy. He does extremely unapologetic about it. Like some people try to be subtle, you know? Mm-hmm. And he's like, listen, here's my art is a little kid and the back of his head is lit by the glow. His name is I can never say it's like Richard, but with an A, like Ratched Loft. Anyway, his like it's a little kid backlit. His head is lit by the glow of a screen, and like the Lion King is on the screen, and then all around him is like all this paraphernalia, like DVDs of like The Fox and the Hound, Aladdin, stuff like that. There's like a Hercules, like he'll have a Disney one. Mm-hmm. He'll have one where they're playing Super Nintendo, and he's got like a thing of the poster of the Predator up there movie. And then there'll be other people he's I'd say the most unapologetic. He's just like every weird knick-knack from that time period I throw into a photo. Or not a photo, a painting. And then the others are like, they're a little more austere. It's like they will paint an empty inside of a Blockbusters. Like no one's there, and it's hyper realistic painting, but still you can tell it's like a painting, right? Or like a digital painting.
Yeah.
And like, but there'll be some like twist to it. Like every single item on the shelves will be like Final Fantasy VII or Friends or something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a great one that's like a little more 80s themed, and it's like a bicycle inside of a mall on the side of the fountain with all the coins inside.
Yeah, man.
And like, it's in the food court, but it's empty. That's the thing all the art is very, except for that first guy who the person is almost always viewed from the back, and they're engulfed in the material culture totally. Like almost all the rest of the artists, their art has no people in it. It's the one thing I notice a lot. Like there's no body. It's like just like there'll be. But at the same time, it does invoke a lot of nostalgia because you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that would feel like, right? But it's weird. It's like an empty Blockbuster, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, and that crosses over to another subgenre called they call it liminal spaces. Are you familiar?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is I for some reason find them hypnotic. There'll be like videos with this vaporwave music, and then they'll be like, the luggage return in an airport, except no one's there.
Right. Well, the whole idea with liminal spaces is it's to like evoke being on the threshold of something, a transition or a moving from one place to another. It's like a passages and halls full of doors, and
yeah,
subway
it's they'll have like a scene of like Joe Schmo's elementary school, like everyone's default elementary school.
Yeah, like you've been there before.
Like the corridor, but it's empty.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe there's a couple of lockers open, like and all the doors, or like a house with all the stuff packed up.
Yeah, both the vaporwave art and the liminal space art feels like you're having a dream in a familiar setting.
Yeah, very much.
But you're alone. Yeah.
And you're alone. And I don't know. I enjoy vaporwave. I think a lot of people do. The music is sort of fun, and sometimes I like to put it on while I'm driving and imagine that I am a gif of an anime character just playing 5 scenes back and forth on repeat. Like just my one strand of hair will be blowing in the wind, and the rest is still. Yeah. And maybe I'm pixelated.
That's a good way to get highway hypnosis. You might want to be careful with that.
You're telling me. I've just been driving, but why? Because I was thinking about this. I think that the millennial generation is proving to be maybe the most nostalgic generation ever.
Yeah,
of Americans. The boomers were a little bit. Like they had like Norman Rockwell, right?
They did, but they also had the 60s and the free love, right. And that defining moment was new.
The defining moment was new. That's right.
It was a culturally new moment for America that they identify with.
Yes, and I don't think millennials have that.
Yeah, it's sort of like we were almost there and then time stopped.
That's a perfect way of putting it. Like we were almost there and then time stopped. And when I look at this artwork, which is so popular, I mean, if you're not familiar with it, it is like a whole art movement now at this point.
Yeah.
It's this whole, I mean, it's like, I don't know, surrealism. I mean, it's like that level of popular, it's like a whole genre of art and music now.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like you're looking at the corpse of a loved one, but it's like what was almost there, like because it seemed so promising, like an image of, and like one of my favorites is this image of a bowling alley in a strip mall, right? It looks like it's in Miami or somewhere beachy,
and
behind it is a Ferris wheel. and there's an empty parking lot and just a skateboard just sitting there. And it's like, you remember how people were almost, it felt like before these things went off the rails. Well, with 9/11, they went off the rails, and they just have been going off the rails ever since. But it felt like prior to that, that America was heading somewhere very positive and very like. And yes, we were hyper consumerist, but at the same time, there's also a bit of like, this was before technology became oppressive.
Yeah, it was just fun.
It was just fun.
Cool. And the country, in the 90s, the country wasn't, and this is hard for people to imagine that are younger than us, but in the 90s, the country wasn't riven with bitter division like it is now. Like, and people had a generally positive view of the future.
They did. Yeah. I mean, like everyone thought it was going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, Back to the Future 2 came out, hoverboards and stuff.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, it's silly and campy, but it there was something behind that. There was. It was
campy, and the worst future was like, oh, there's a few bullies on a hoverboard that made. Oh, your hoverboard don't work on water.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
The guy with his nasally voice.
Yep.
And like that's as bad as it would get, right? But it seems so positive, and then I think people are. They're nostalgic, and they're trying to. I think collectively, the generation is trying to work through what went wrong by going back and looking at this, and going back and feeling it out. And they're putting it in music, and they're putting it in art, and they're sort of like, okay, what happened? Like, what did we go off the? And I think most people know it sort of happened around 9/11, but then you're like, but what? But why?
Maybe that's why all the art is empty of people. It's like we should be there, but we're not there, so the scene is empty.
Yes, we should be there, but we're not. And yeah, like I said, it was consumerist, and there was a lot of. I mean, there's genuine criticisms of that time, like it was hyper consumerist and stuff. But at the same time, the technology and the consumerism, it was actually connecting people more than alienating them at that point.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
because like you could. Like you would have, let's say you play video games, right? Like the Xbox or whatever. But the internet wasn't fast enough yet where you could just do that from your house. People had to come over to your house to play.
Yeah.
Or I remember if you wanted to play, I like to play that game. I don't even remember which one it was. It was one of the Quakes,
Yeah.
And I remember lugging the whole PC to like the campus. And plugging it in, and we'd have a LAN party.
LAN party, yeah, man.
Right? And so, and people would, like, texting wasn't there. Like, you still had to call people on the phone and talk with your voice. I think there's a lot of desire for that. Like, remember when we used technology to get more connected with people instead of now we're all, like, hyper alienated?
As an aside note, I think the reason podcasting is so popular and people can listen to 20 shows in a week is that they want to hear a friendly voice, a familiar voice, and we don't talk very much anymore.
Yeah,
it's all written communication, and people
true and
need to hear
and
it.
Sad.
Yeah,
people don't just hear voices anymore, and like keeping up with somebody, like you used to like call people and like even if you didn't see them all the time.
Yeah,
you call people like, yeah, what's going on? You might talk for like a half an hour or an hour, then you hang up. And then, and then maybe next week, next month, you'd call again. And so you sort of, that podcasting is in some ways a replacement for that. Because you hear people's lives throughout time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I think that this is, I was just thinking about it, and I was like, why is this empty of people? And why is it so focused on like the material culture and not, because like Norman Rockwell was more like it had a lot of people in it. You know?
Yeah.
And not that he was. I mean, in his own words, he said, "This isn't the America that is. It's the America that could or should be." Like America was never that peaceful and wholesome.
Norman Rockwell had moral vision, and it reflected.
He was
in his
like,
art.
"We could be like this," And I think vaporwave is on the opposite. It's like we were like this.
Yeah.
So what happened? And I think people are trying to work that out. And I think that's why it resonates with so many people. And it's like, I mean, it's gone into a million genres where like there's people that are just focused on like video game vaporwave or like 80s TV shows or computer retro. It's like, but everyone's clinging to that piece of the past that they have the most emotions attached to and be like, okay, but what went wrong?
Yeah. Even the word vapor, you can't, it's something you can see it, but you can't really touch it. You can't hold it.
It's a vapor. You can see it. You can't touch it. And it's passing by like a wave.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But I find that a cultural, it's a highly American moment because all of it's highly American culture. And it's very much like, what are we collectively trying to work through with that? And all I could come to was like, we're trying to be like, what went wrong? And could we ever is this the normies version of can we return to tradition?
Yeah.
And maybe so. Because I do think one of the problems with trads is that it's hard to get people to return to something before they were born. Because they don't have first-hand knowledge of it.
Right. And I don't think we can't go back to the 90s, but there's a series of like magic spells, that have been put upon our nation that stopped time, so to speak, and sidetracked us. And but they could be broken,
That's a good way of putting it. It's stopped time. Like culture hasn't progressed.
Yeah.
Past,
culture stopped. Yeah. It stopped at 9/11.
It did. Like the clock stopped at 9/11, and it was like, and then it stopped ticking, and it's sort of like is like a zombie movie because like people get older, they move on, people die, people are born, and like yes, time is moving, but also it's not. It's like the ideas, the problems. I mean, we're just like still worrying about terrorism and it's just everything's on a loop, and there's no.
Do you think people that are young enough to not really know 9/11 firsthand, do you think they're getting this conversation?
I think that they are. I think that they're listening interestedly because they're like, they know America used to be different and they know it's wrong now.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of the popular art and music with those younger people is nostalgic for a time that they didn't experience.
Yes, which is very strange. It's like nostalgia for a time you weren't even there. Like I saw I was going through this, sort of thinking about this for the show, and I was looking at various video compilations and stuff, and there was one of like 90s pop music, and it was like Chumbawamba and Bare Naked Ladies and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there was this comment on there. This one kid was like, I'm 17 and I feel like this is what I was supposed to have. Wow. Right? And it sounds weird because it sounds like you're being like, oh, it sounds like you're just doing the boomer thing of like our music was the best and then but you get people that are younger, like people born in the 2000s, they never experienced the 20th century, even as young children, even as babies. Who I guess now are, could be 21 years old. They could be full adults. Mm-hmm. And then, but they even are like, I think they may be the biggest consumers of this media. Yeah. This vaporwave media. It's not, I mean, it's made by millennials. Mm-hmm. Almost exclusively, but not totally. Like if you look up the artists and stuff, they're like almost all like people in their 30s and 40s and, but the main consumers of it appear to be young 20s people or teenagers. Yeah. And I find that that's saying something. I'm not sure what, but I don't know. It's also like heavily, it's also very internet focused. Like I was saying, it's like the internet used to be a force for good. Mm-hmm. And people remember that. And yes, the early internet was a bit of the Wild West, and you could get scammed, or then there was like
no regulations at all on like what people were putting up there.
Yeah, I mean there was bad stuff on there too,
Yeah, but it was also like it was a form of expression. Like everyone had their own website. Can you imagine that now? Instead of like having a Facebook page, people would like make their own website.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was crap because they did it themselves. But it was also sort of endearing because they did it themselves.
Yeah.
Like I had a website, and I don't even remember what it was. I think I made my first website when I was maybe around 11.
Awesome.
And it was me sort of blogging about stuff, mostly about pro wrestling.
Yeah, I had one too. I think I started it when I was in high school, and I wrote like little commentary and poetry and things.
Yeah, and like you, and your friends would like go to your website.
Yeah,
and you would go to their website.
Yep.
And then we sort of mass produced that. It was sort of like you built your own home, and then we said no, we're gonna have cookie cutter houses, and we'll call it like Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
the thing is that the efficiency and the ease of like social media, Facebook and Twitter, as a replacement for your own website, like here's your thing, here's your blogs, here's your micro blogging, whatever. It's so easy and convenient that it just wiped that out. But what did we lose?
Mm-hmm.
Because discourse did we got more discourse, but the quality went to hell.
Yeah, where those old websites, they were like you would go with your friends and build a clubhouse in the woods.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was a digital clubhouse in the woods that you would build. Yeah,
yeah, and it would be crazy and rickety, but it would have great stuff in it, and you'd have lots of fun there.
Yeah, and it might have the early meme of the dancing baby.
Yeah.
That everyone put on their thing for some reason. Or
well, that was like the only GIF,
It was the only GIF.
Yeah.
It was the first one, the only one. And then there was that one of the chicken after that. But I don't know. That wasn't as popular. That was the second one I remember. The second GIF. It was just a chicken walking. A little. But yeah, vaporwave. Because it's easy to dismiss it as like culture's stuck, and it is. Culture is stuck. Like everything's a remake now. Everything's a remake of something from that time.
Yeah. I mean, we're making
everything.
Transformers.
There's no new
movies
stories.
Yeah, G.I. Joe. I mean,
they made a movie called Battleship off the board game Battleship.
Yeah.
They made a movie about the board game Battleship. How stuck are you? I mean, that is stuck.
You're really scraping the barrel at that point.
You're scraping Battleship is fun like once when you're 8.
Yeah.
And then it's not fun anymore because it's not an interesting game. It's something you would play when you've done everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But then they like made a movie out of Battleship, and then they make movie like some of the most popular Disney movies are like based off rides at Disney World, like the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
Like, remember this ride you went on as a kid?
Yeah.
Now it's a movie, and those were fine. I mean, at least the first
they were
one.
fun. Yeah,
they were fun, but still, it's like very stuck. Like that's bottom of the barrel. Like the ride with the little animatronics at Disney World is our inspiration.
Yeah. I mean, the highest grossing films are all comic book movies based on things that were created in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah, and there's no new heroes. They're the same heroes.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they may make one of them black or gay,
mm-hmm.
but that's the extent of innovation, quote unquote. Like, oh, well, now Spider-Man's gay, but he still has the same powers. Basically the same backstory, except now maybe he's kvetching a bit because he's an angry Jew.
Yeah.
Like, did they make one of them a Jew and he like was like, I've been oppressed in the Holocaust and web. They did that.
Really?
Yeah, one of them he was a Jew.
I don't watch those movies, man.
I know one of them. It was like just one, or maybe there was two of them, and the kid in there, and then like for like completely throw away like identity politics line. That didn't go with the story. He was like, well, I'm Jewish and our people, blah, 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 Holocaust.
web fight. I mean, it was a total non sequitur. It was just service to ID poll, right?
And then compare that to like the 60s through 90s when we had things that had never been done before, like Star Wars, the Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, that kind of stuff. I mean, they were all sort of Hollywood, but at least they were new stories, new heroes.
And everything they try now doesn't. If they do try something now, it falls almost completely flat. Every time.
People don't even want it.
And I think because there's no culture to come from anymore. Mm-hmm. To like even like what was the big movie, the big TVs of the 2010s was Game of Thrones, but didn't he start writing that in like 73?
I don't know.
And he still hasn't finished it because he's a fat pervert.
Got distracted.
I mean, really, that's why.
Yeah.
George R.R. Martin is just lazy. You've had like 30 years finish your book. And it's not like you're writing on the side and have to work full time. You have all the money in the world and time to just finish this book.
It's probably why he can't finish it. He's got all the money in the world.
It's probably why he can't finish it. It's also, I tell you why he can't finish it, is he can't live up to the hype. Like, he had so many people reading his book.
True.
The ending is the hardest part of the book.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a gymnast routine. If you don't stick the landing, it doesn't matter what else you did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bet he's written the ending like 1,000 times. It's like, no. No. And he just keeps crumpling it up and throwing it away. And now he's just frustrated with it. And what he needs to do is just do something and be like, listen. And then a meteor killed everybody.
Yeah. Just do something to demonstrate your disdain for the audience. And then just sail off on your yacht. Finishing
is better than not finishing, even if you finish poorly. Finishing poorly is better than not finishing. But everything, like Star Wars, we just keep making new Star Warses, and they're not good most of the time. Solo was okay. Rogue One was okay. But the rest of them were The one that came out the first time, what was it called? I don't even remember because no one cares. The Last Jedi, maybe? I don't know. It was an exact scene for scene, step for step, beat for beat repeat of the first Star Wars, except instead of Luke Skywalker, it was a girl. It was exact, like, she's on a desert planet. She has some droids. She makes droid fixing. The Millennium Falcon shows up. She gets on the Millennium Falcon. She goes, they find that it was a one for one thing. It was the whole same movie. Exactly the same movie. And I think Vaporwave is dealing with, like, we're stuck. What do we do?
Yeah.
And I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know how to get unstuck. I enjoy Vaporwave. I like the music. I like the, like one of the subgenres is called mall soft, which is like the music you might hear in the mall when you were going to Spencer's.
Spencer's.
Right?
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
Spencer's was Hot Topic when we were kids.
Yeah, or when you were going to Hot Topic.
Yeah.
To pretend to be goth for one day.
Right.
Yeah, that's another. I mean, before that, I know this just sounds like old person radio now, but I think it's for a purpose. Like, because I'm trying to analyze like what has happened.
Well, if the segment is well received, we'll know that our young audience is suffering from great nostalgia.
Like, I think they are. I think a lot of them are. I mean, isn't one of you made a comment that you were going to be a vaporwave artist and just say drink, and put it in. And you had a younger person that was like offended.
Yeah, I got ripped for it. I think it was in good spirit. It was in
good spirits, but he likes the genre, no?
Yeah. It was what's that stuff called? Lo-fi, which is interesting because I think part of the point of it is that it sounds like it was on vinyl. It's all crackly and
this whole music they put in static on purpose.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting move to put static in. To put like visual static, like blur, like like maybe you were rewinding a VHS tape.
Yeah.
Or radio static.
The whole VHS, like paused VHS scene.
Yes. Yeah.
Visual effect is popular among people that have never seen a VHS. That's weird.
That's what I'm saying. That's what makes me so interested in this thing. Is like, why is you never had a VHS, but then that is so popular among people that never even saw that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't know. I don't really know what that means, like psychologically, for so many people. But like to put in static on purpose, like it's almost like a reaction, like, you know what? The quality's too good. It's like 4K video is too. You see the pores in everyone's skin on the TV,
right?
Like at some point, the clarity becomes so quote unquote good that it's bad. Like the fidelity becomes so high that it's now low again.
It's almost like the advancement of the technology sucked all the energy out of everything else.
Yeah, the technology became so clear that it dwarfed the humanity.
Right, and you can't even... It's like if the tech is so good, you can't even use it to tell a story. You know?
That's the nail on the head right there.
It just sucks all the energy out of it, yeah.
It sucks. It becomes... The medium is the message, you know? And if the medium becomes so quote-unquote good, like if the bit rate is so high...
Yeah. The only message is, look at how good the bit rate is.
Oh,
yeah.
That's it. I think you figured it out. I think that right there is what it is.
Because there's only so much, like, the human person only has so much bandwidth, you know, to take in the meaning. And it's funny, I was conversing with one of our listeners today about is a feeling a meaning and all this stuff. And it's like you can listen to this music and get these feelings and these meanings, but if you're like watching a movie or something with these incredible special effects and the special effects are just blowing you away, you might get some feeling out of it, but are you going to get real meaning out of it? Is there going to be a real story told that's going to affect you? I would argue that it's less likely.
Yeah, it is less likely. I think that's the obsession with like these older video games as well, because like I see a lot of like in this artwork, like the original Legend of Zelda pops up a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like that one, and that's an issue because it's like such a low. It had a story that resonated with people, even though the story was not like overly complicated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very, but it was told through like 8 bits or like 64 bits. You know?
Yeah.
And then, but when you move up and you're telling these things, like it almost like as graphical quality improves in a video game or in a movie, it begins to take away. Like that's why CGI like is used in movies all the time now, and maybe by NASA, and that makes it really starts to take away from it. Like the original Star Wars, he was using little miniatures, you know, and it looked real good. And now people look at it, and it's like you can't. It's like in that uncanny valley place, you know?
Right. This explains Minecraft.
Oh, that's a great point. Minecraft is a great example because Minecraft is literally the lowest res you can be.
Yeah.
And it's the most popular game ever.
Mm-hmm. By
like leaps and bounds. It's like, what if we just got rid of graphics and we just had everything is a block of the same size?
Like the little, what's his name? Steve? Is that the Minecraft dude?
Yeah, the Minecraft character.
He's more humane and relatable than, I don't know, name some big video game character.
Yeah.
Any of them. Any of these new, like the Assassin's Creed guy. Okay?
Yeah, like you don't even... Like,
I feel more of an emotional connection to Steve than I do to the Assassin's Creed protagonist guys.
I think most people do.
Yeah.
And also the game is more fun and more sociable because it's around like, yes, we're building stuff together.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? We're building things together, and that's a reason to come. It captures a bit of like, it's low res, it's in many ways low tech. It's very low tech, really, for a game. But it gives us a reason to have a community, not even a community. Community's a faking gay word. Just friendships.
Yeah.
To hang out. Like people say words when they don't have the thing.
Yeah.
Like they say community is a word used by people that don't have communities.
Ooh, that cuts me deep.
Isn't it? Because like if you have a community, it's like if you have a community that's real and organic, it's sort of just there like the air. It's like the Eskimos when they're like, we don't have a word for snow or whatever because it's just there all the time.
I mean, it's true. I don't often talk about my community, but I talk about my friends.
Yeah.
I don't refer to them that way.
Right. Communities don't exist anymore, largely. Like, they're all artificial. It's like the black community. They say that all the time. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, there's no name.
There's not one. Yeah.
There's not one. Like, what do black people get together? Like, groups of black friends get together and, like, have a barbecue. Sure. But there's not like a...
But they're not the black community. And there's not a white community either.
Exactly. There's not an anything community. Because they don't commune around anything.
Yeah.
Right? They don't. What do they commune around? Like, used to, at least, you'd have like the village church or whatever, and you'd go literally have communion around the thing. And you would like buy and sell from each other, and you would live in proximity and know your neighbors. But there's none of that now. And so community's a fake and gay word, but you could have just your friends would get together and you could build things. And that is reason enough, and that's what they want, rather than like let's just make it sharper and clearer and cooler and whiz bang.
Yeah. And a lot of these massive open world games sell themselves on the fact that your interaction with the environment is increasingly less limited. Mm-hmm. When I feel like that makes the game worse.
And sometimes it does, yeah.
Because you have to have the structure and the restrictions and the rules and the limited options is what pushes your creativity forward. And maybe that's part of why culture stopped, is because when the internet really did finally explode,
technology got so good, culture stopped.
We didn't have limits anymore on culture.
Yes.
Like, we didn't have to make cultural choices, and so we just stopped making culture.
Oh, that's deep. You didn't have to make choices anymore because you could just say all of it.
Yeah, you could be any culture you wanted on any given day.
Yeah.
And it became so cheap that it wasn't worth making anymore.
Oh, that's good. It became so cheap it became so good that it wasn't worth having.
Like, if you were a knife maker, and you could only ever sell a knife for a penny, nobody would make knives anymore.
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly what happened to the music industry.
Yeah.
With like Napster and Spotify.
It happened to literally everything on the internet.
Yes, and to everything people consume.
Yeah.
It was like, well, do you want this or that? How about both? How about both of them always from Amazon on delivery right now?
And the things that are rapidly increasing in value or getting more scarce and harder to come by are the things that cannot be internetified. So, good food that's not factory garbage, real estate, actual deep relationships. You can't do that over the internet. Yeah, man.
You can't. I mean, that's
culture. That's the thing. That's why culture stopped, man.
Yeah, you're right. That hits the nail on the head. It got so cheap it wasn't worth it anymore. So how do we get it? Is there a way out of that? I don't know.
There's the obvious,
the obvious collapse,
the obvious, very, very difficult solution that nobody wants.
But then won't we just go right back to it? It's the problem. Like, once the genie's out of the bottle, even if you collapse, like the Soviet Union collapsed, and then they immediately, after like 10 years, they're like, and now McDonald's.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Is the tech genie? It's like,
I mean, maybe humanity will learn that things. I know.
That's the most optimistic sentence that's ever been uttered.
Yeah, that's
maybe
true.
Humanity will learn.
That's true. But we'll just think maybe some people would learn that things that you can get online, including your culture, are worthless, and will stop. And if you just abandon those, If you don't get them online, then you have to make it yourself again. And the cultures we make ourselves with our own people are the things that actually mean something and stick. Like, that's how we got to the 90s.
Yeah.
Is making a real one.
And honestly, I mean, yes, all the issues of like personal freedom and stuff and tyranny, but that's a problem. But my personal, like, most deeply felt opposition to the lockdowns was like, we can't go more into the computer. We will die.
Yeah.
Like, we can't be, not everything can just be Zoom now.
But that was the point of the lockdowns, or one of the points.
Like, we can't.
Yeah.
We can't just dive into the computer screen harder. That's the end of humanity.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, we want to go out of the computer screen a bit. We want to come out a bit, you know? And it's one of these things, it's a technology, we have to learn to use this as a tool and not let it, control us, which good luck. Good luck.
We did for about 5 minutes, we did. And
for about 5 minutes.
Blew out of
and
control.
That's what the whole vaporwave thing is about.
Yeah.
Is that 5 minutes.
It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think you figured it out.
Maybe.
Exactly
I'll go back and listen to this again and see if it still sounds profound. Production room update. It still sounds profound.
I think we did some I think we did some big culture work there.
We sound like a couple of cranky old coots, though.
But that's okay.
It probably is. I mean, when I'm old, I'm gonna embrace the role of sage.
I'm not cranky about it because here's the difference: the cranky boomers, and the cranky, quote unquote, greatest generation who did an unnecessary giant war and blew up the whole world. Not sure greatest generation is but whatever. Greatest generation. That's a pretty big claim. We're the greatest generation.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Really? The greatest one, huh? The one that blew up the world? That doesn't, but whatever.
They're pretty good at building culture, though.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, and then the cranky before them, all those, they were always looking back like, why don't the younger people like our stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what we're doing is different because we're wondering, why do they like our stuff so much?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm really confused. Man. Like the paused,
you guys are supposed to have your own stuff.
the paused VHS tape thing.
Yeah.
Is so, because that comes up, it's like this, and it's like a paused VHS still.
Yeah.
And like music going on behind it. And people just look at it and they start crying. Like, they literally start, you look at some of these videos and underneath it, people be like, this reminds me of when I had friends. And it's like, what? It's like, well, because people used to, instead of streaming, they would go to each other's house and watch a movie.
Yeah. And people do that still.
They do, but less and less.
Much less, yeah.
And yeah, because what we're doing is if we're being great, it's because we're like, why are they so into our stuff? And why, and why is it?
I think it must mean that they know that we had something that they don't.
Yeah.
But we don't have it anymore either, but.
Yeah. Yeah. And that liminal spaces art, it's like we were transitioning, we were almost going, and we took a wrong turn. That's what that's about. Like, here's the liminal space. We could have zigged and we zagged. And we zagged because of the magic spell of 9/11.
We're in a doctor's office of time, and we're trying to find the checkout desk, and we just keep turning corners, and there's just more doors.
There's just more doors, and every time
I just want to check out, please.
And every time you try to find the way out, there's just a picture of the Twin Towers falling over and over again.
Yeah.
And people are like, never forget. It's like, no, you should forget.
Yeah.
You really should. Like, you shouldn't be reliving the trauma of the past every day. Like, that's never a good slogan. Like, never again with the Holocaust. Never. Like, first of all, good luck preventing all future genocides in history.
Yeah, they happen all the time. Sorry.
Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, never forget. Like, you should. you should move past that. Like, think about it. Culture stopped, and the slogan was "Never forget."
Yeah, the never forget. That was one of the most powerful spells put upon our country.
Yeah, like never forget. Don't move past. Don't stay here.
Yeah.
That's and really George Bush tried to keep. I don't know if this was intentional or just like this is the way reality comes out, like the symbolism. But remember, he said he tried to keep us in that material culture because he said the way we beat terrorism is we go shopping.
Yeah, I remember that.
And everyone just sort of said, "Yeah." Remember that? Everyone said, "Yeah."
Yeah, it was like your patriotic duty to go to the mall and spend money. Yeah.
We're like, what? And I remember even as a kid going, "What? How do we beat terrorism by going shopping?"
Yeah, I don't think that's going to fix it. But that was
accepted as like a reasonable statement.
Right.
And I don't know. I think.
Well, even then we knew that terrorism is a boogeyman and there's nothing you can do about it because it's just. Well, you can't look at it as a phenomena.
I mean, I didn't know that then, but in my defense, I was like a teenager who was just thinking that adults knew what they were doing.
Right. Well, I think we knew it like on a spiritual level. Yeah. That's why we reacted to that.
I was quickly disabused of that notion that adults knew anything as I entered into adulthood. But at the time, they were like, it was like, yeah, we have to go. They hate us for our freedoms and freedom fries. And I'm proud to be an American and all of that, And Kenny Chesney gets up there and he's like, well, the big dog will fight if you rattle his cage.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, this is what we got to do. And no one ever stopped and was like, wait a minute. Are we?
Well, we had to be transfixed by that 9/11 moment so that we would support the 2 decades of war that was going to come after.
Yeah, and we're just stuck, and I don't, and everyone, and all the politicians are old, like even the, I don't know.
So what does it mean when all these guys die? Like, I mean, Rumsfeld just died. When all these guys are dead, are we still stuck?
We're going to make the 3rd remake of Space Jam.
Are we really?
That's what we're going to do. Because we got the second one right now with LeBron James. And when all of them, when Biden dies and Trump dies and Obama dies, and we're going to have Space Jam 3, which will be the same movie, except maybe Colin Powell will be in it. And he'll be telling Bugs Bunny we have to go stop them and hold up a vial of white powder and shake it at them. Like, listen, we have to go. Weapons of mass destruction. And Bugs Bunny's like, oh no. And then he gets an aged LeBron James at this point. We'll play. Yeah, but culture stuck. That was a good analysis. I think we figured it out. You're welcome, everybody.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. We did some good culture critiquing there. I think we help people. We always help people here on the show.
Well, it's been a good show.
Hey, wait a minute.
What? Oh, wait. We still got a show?
We still got a show.
Oh, yeah. We're going to do Flat Earth. Okay, let's do it.
Did you forget for real?
No, I was just kidding.
Now my groove is thrown off. Before, thank you to everyone that has signed up for the St. Nicholas Project, which again is our little companion piece podcast, which you shouldn't expect much out of. We just like to give you a little something for this is a way for you to financially help the podcast out.
Yep.
And also, without just being a straight donation, because that makes me feel a little weird. And I like to just give you something in exchange for your money. So it's $7 a month. And thank you for everyone that's done that. It's been very nice.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Of you. You guys are great. If you want to sign up, link in the descriptions and all that. I don't know. But, okay, Flat Earth. Flat Earth. And like I said, we're mining for gold here. I'm not saying I'm a flat earther. I'm not saying you got to be a flat earther. I'm saying you can't, like Bernard Shaw says, you don't really know anything about the spinning earth, most likely, if you're the average person. One of our listeners may be very knowledgeable about all the spinning of the earth and everything, right?
And I can almost guarantee it. Yeah.
but most of you aren't. And so a lot of you just believe things because you were told the thing at the time, and the person that told you couldn't have explained it either. And so when someone comes along and asks you very simple questions about things, you probably aren't able to answer them. And also, maybe the Earth is flat. I don't know. I've never been up there. I know that NASA lied about the moon missions and said you can't see stars in space. Doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. And they're the only ones giving me any evidence. I mean, that's one of the things. So here's the thing. Well, back up. Reverse. Okay, so one of the things, here's the interesting part for me. When you start talking about flat Earth, or talking to flat Earth people, if you embody a flat Earth person, as I'm doing for this show, right? If I step into my flat Earth suit, and you talk to people, the first question they ask you is almost always not, what evidence do you have? What about this? What about that? The first question, almost, I'd say 80% of the time, is why would they lie? Interesting that that's the first question.
Yeah.
Because people, in my experience, are more open to thinking about, like, what if the Earth isn't curved? You know, like, they're like, if you go like, yeah, it is strange that the Earth never looks curved at all, ever in my waking life, even when I'm at 40,000 feet in an airplane. People are open to talking about that. They're like, yeah, sure, because it's not like, there's not a lot of emotion involved. It's not like talking about racism, which it has a bunch of emotion. It's like, where's the curve of the Earth? And people are like, yeah. And so there's not like an emotional trigger, you know. But the first question they ask, the first one that comes to them is, okay, sure, whatever. But if it isn't a ball, why would they pretend it was? That's the first thing people want, is like a motive. Right? So like means, method, motive, opportunity, like in a crime scene. Means and opportunity comes second for almost everyone. It's like, okay, but first, why would they lie? And that's a good question. And the answer, if you stop and think about it, is like, oh, only like a million reasons. Only like a million reasons. I'm not going to rank them, but here's a couple of good ones. Remember how on last show we discussed the principle of, if you can get people to see X and then say, no, X isn't real, then they own you harder?
Yeah.
It's a form of brainwashing. Like, it's like I said, again, with the Star Trek thing, they hold you hostage, they torture you, they put 4 lights above you, and they say, how many lights are there? Say 3, and you say 4. And if you don't say anything but 3, if you say the truth, then they shock you, right? And to mentally break him, and this is a real torture technique they would do with people, they still do with people, is that they want you to say, like, you know, what's your name? Oh, no, your name is actually Jones. And when you agree to the thing that isn't true, or you agree to a thing that's contrary to your own eyes, the brainwashing cements that much harder. Right?
Right.
Okay, well, if, again, not taking this, I'm taking it aside for the purpose of the show, but that's it. If you're being lied to about the shape of the Earth, that's that principle times 10,000.
Yeah.
Because, and this is ultimately why I think Flat Earth thing has gained so much traction, is because their mantra is a very simple refrain. That's their primary rhetoric. They just say, your senses are correct. They just say, like, they'll be in, like, because they have their own vaporwave. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. There's Flat Earth wave.
Oh, cool.
Which is great. Which is great and ridiculous.
I gotta get some.
But they'll be like, boom, there's like rap beats, you know? And then they'll be like, Eric Dubé in the background going, your senses are correct. Your senses are correct. Things are how you see them. But see, that's a powerful piece of rhetoric. It's like, look, things are how they look like they are. You go outside, and it doesn't look like things are spinning because they aren't. And people are like, oh, that makes intuitive sense. It's like, it looks like the sun is going around the Earth because it is.
Yeah.
And it looks like the moon and the sun are the same size because they are. And like I said with that quote with Bernard Shaw, everything the opposite of what you observe. It's this weird trick. Think about this for a second. Science has trained you, if this is how things are, and this is definitely how things are in other realms, like you don't see viruses, right? You don't see a lot of the stuff they talk about. You don't see gamma rays. You don't see. But what they do is they say the way things appear, right? Like if there's male and female, that's not what it is. That's not true. Or it looks like the ocean. Yes, I know that it seems like the ocean is not rising and killing everyone, but it is. Say that it is.
Yeah.
Agree. Right? Or, and you notice this over and over again, like none of the claims of most of science can you ever actually verify in any way yourself with your own senses, your own 5 senses. And so that what, and it's like an inversion. If this were to be correct, it's like an inversion because you go outside and you say, it looks like the sun and moon are the same size. And they say, yeah, but actually the sun's 400 times bigger. And you go, oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, it is. I know it looks the same, but it's actually 400 times bigger. And it looks like you're being still, but you're actually spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. And going around the sun, it's 66,600 miles an hour. And the sun is going around the galaxy at an even faster speed. It's like millions of miles an hour. And the galaxy is then moving like a significant portion of the speed of light, like through the universe, through our galaxy cluster. And our galaxy cluster is then moving, and it's tilting. It's all tilting. The globe is tilting back and forth through the seasons, and the sun is pulsating and tilting, and then the galaxy wobbles, and it's all spinning, and it's spinning in different ways. And then you put your glass of water on the table and it doesn't move at all. And people are like, Like, that's a powerful rhetoric too. You say, you're spinning, you're moving, and then you set a glass of water down and says, doesn't look like it's moving. And people are like, yeah, it does seem like if there's all this crazy motion at like millions and millions of miles per hour. Like if you add it all up, the spin of the spin, the orbit, the sun's orbit, the sun moving in the galaxy moving through the galaxy cluster, it's fast. And it's moving in all sorts of ways, and you never, ever, ever feel any of it. That's a bit suspicious. Again, like I said, I may know the answers to these questions. I may not, but I'm not going to tell you. You work it out. Or think about it. Or think about why you don't know.
I think the exercise of thinking about it and figuring it out for yourself is probably useful, even if you come to
there's even an answer. I'm not. Yeah. Look, flat Earth may be true. I'm just throwing it out there, but just for the exercise. Okay. Why don't you feel any of that? Why don't you ever feel any of it? Ever? How come there's no way for you to ever go up high enough where you see the curve of the Earth? Ever? You can climb Mount Everest, you can't see it. They say it's still higher up. You can get in an airplane and go across. Still looks flat. And it goes around. Do you know the angle at which the Earth supposedly tilts?
No, I don't.
Well, it is. Let me make sure I do this right. It is 23.4 degrees of tilt on average. That's the tilt of the Earth on its axis. Do you know? But that's at a 90-degree angle, right? That's tilt off the 90. 90 minus 23.4 is 66.6.
That's funny. That's
a funny thing. And then it goes around the sun. How fast? 66,600 miles an hour. And then, what's the curvature of the Earth actually? How much does it curve? 0.66 feet per mile? Actually, what did they say it is? 8 inches per mile squared is the curvature of the Earth officially, and 8 inches is 0.66 feet per mile. Is it possible, let me just throw this out there, that the metric system is imposed on people to obscure the fact that the true, actually natural unit system, if you use that, the number 666 pops up all over the place? Could it be? I don't know. But there's 3 primary measurements of the Earth and its spin and curve that come out to 666.
It's a little weird.
That's a bit weird. I mean, I don't know but it's certainly strange. And then, so what they say is like your senses are correct. You go outside, like you know, and what it looks like to your eyes and to your body and feels like is what it is. You don't have to look through a screen. NASA's always showing you through a screen, you know? It's all stuff you get through a screen secondhand. And the flat earther just says, walk outside. How's the world look? That's how it is. You know? So that's one motive. Because just like them getting you to look at Biden's hands going through a microphone with Hobbit Jimmy Carter, and you say, no, that's real. Like, or Elon Musk allegedly shooting his car into space, into orbit, to go to Mars. He says on stage, and I quote, "You can tell it's real because it looks so fake."
Yeah.
And you say, yeah, that's true. You can tell it's real. Things that are real look fake. Yeah, if that's not what's really happening, then they're owning your mind so hard. If they get you to say the point where you say things are real because they look fake, you are mind controlled beyond belief. Because then they just do things that look fake because they don't even have to try. And you're like, well, it looks real because it looks fake.
Yeah, talk about like the skeleton key to your belief system.
Yeah,
right there, man.
Just like they got everyone to go, yeah, you can't see stars in space. That makes sense when Armstrong said it, right? If the world really was or is flat, and they can get you to go, are we moving? And you go, it doesn't feel like it. And they say, but we are. We're actually moving insanely fast. Agree. And you stand on the grass with your bare feet and your toes touching, unmoving, completely still dirt. And you say, yeah, we're moving at like 666 million miles an hour or whatever it comes out to be. I'm sure that probably comes out to 6662 if you add up all the motions. I wouldn't be surprised. They own your mind, you know? And that's how, because now you can't trust any of your senses and you're reliant totally always on quote unquote experts to tell you what's real. I'm not sick. I don't feel sick. Yeah, you are though. See, that's actually one of the symptoms is not feeling sick. And you're going to kill grandma if you hug her. They really said that.
Yeah.
And people are like, yeah. And you go, I'm not racist. I don't feel like I hate black people. You do though. You see, you participate willingly, even though you don't know it, in systemic system oppression engaged in black erasure. What is black erasure? It means you're erasing black people, like with a ray gun. What say you agree? Black Lives Matter. Because the social pressure is so hard. There's been experiments. This is some of the interesting social science, like psychology experiments. You put like 5 people in a room. Well, usually you need a little more than 5, about 8. And I forget where the threshold is where people feel overwhelmed by peer pressure. I think it's like 8 people. So let's say you get 9 people in the room and 8 of them are actors. And you say, we're going to hold up some objects, like just a triangle or a square, and we're going to say, like, what color is it? And your guys are all going to say green when it's actually red. And they hold up the sign. It says, and they introduce the experiment, and they say, we're just doing a simple color visualization test, like to see people's registration of color. And how they can tell the nuances of color. And so we just need you, we're going to get a baseline of some easy stuff with everybody. Hold up some objects of color. Everyone just please shout out what they think the color is. And they hold up the red triangle and everyone goes green. And the one guy goes red. And he's sort of silent. And they do the next one and it's like orange and they know to say blue. Blue. And and then you can watch this. It's fascinating. And then they'll go like, I don't know, purple square. And everyone says black. And they hold it up and they go black. And he goes, black. And a majority of people will do that.
Yeah.
Because people feel intense pressure to conform. For many reasons. One, they don't want to feel weird. They don't, but underlying, I don't want to feel weird is like, maybe something's wrong with my eyes, you know, like if everyone sees it, but not me, like maybe I feel, and I don't want people to know that my eyes are messed up and that I'm crazy and defunct. Like it's the rare person like you or I who I will sit there in front of the entire world and say, I don't think it's like that. And everyone will look and like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know. Is the earth moving? I'm like, ah! You know, cause I don't. But that's a rare personality type. And it doesn't mean I'm better. Doesn't mean that I'm, it's just what it is, you know? And some people are high in disagreeableness. And I'm not a person. I'm not even like a disagreeable in a mean way. I just don't agree to things. When people are like, well, let's agree, and I'm like, no, it's not. I don't. Sometimes I just don't agree just because it's fun. Like really, it's just like people are like, let's all agree. I'm like, no, even if I think they're right. And so that really happens, or like. They get you to admit the systemic racism thing. Like, I didn't build the system. I was born into it. Yeah, but you did. You're guilty. Say it. Like, okay. And I studied this at Yale. I'm an expert. Admit it. Okay. And then you go, I think maybe there's a connection between biology and sex and gender. Like most people I've met think they're girls have uteruses and stuff. And they go, no. That's because you don't know science. We know science. Mm-hmm. You're mistaken. You see how the game plays out there.
Yep.
Now, again, I'm not saying that this is what's happening with the Earth and the shape of it. I'm just saying that if indeed the Earth were flat, that's a pretty good motive to lie about it. Because if you take the base perception of the world, the number one thing that you would see, the most fundamental thing, and you say, it's actually not what it appears to be, now, if you get the majority of people to agree with you, you own the populace. You own their minds. Because they can't tell what's real. Only you can.
Yeah.
That's powerful, you see. Mind control is very real. Mind control isn't fake. It is gay, but it's not fake. It happens all the time, like in religion all the time. And note, I'm a religious person, but it's easy to see. Like, there are people right now who believe they've done things so wrong that Allah won't forgive them unless they blow themselves up in a movie theater. That's mind control.
Yeah.
Some imam, some crazy imam, some bad imam is like, listen, you didn't adhere to Ramadan, and look at this. You got drunk, and you ate there's some bacon in that sandwich. I don't know if you knew that. And here, look, by a strict interpretation of this verse in the Quran, you're going to hell. And they're like, oh no. And it's probably some young kid. They've been raised to fear Allah and to like think like, I want to do good and get to heaven. And they're like, I've messed up. And what can I do? And they say, unfortunately, like there's just nothing. These sins are like mortal sins, man, and there's not like the same thing in Christianity where it's like confession or repentance. And so he gives them the strict line, and then he's like, but look, there is a way. You make the ultimate sacrifice. Allah will forgive you, and that's how you get people to do that. These people that go blow up they like strap on vests. They were doing it almost always not for hatred, but for fear of their own soul.
Yeah.
Right? And like this is how I got to get forgiven. That's mind control, And mind control happens always by you accepting that something that does not appear to be true to your senses on the basis of someone else's authority. It's ceding your own rationality and intellect to decide what is true to someone else. Now, asterisk. Coming to your own truth, trusting your own self is not without its dangers. Not at all. You can fall down rabbit holes very easily and brainwash yourself and never get out. You can be one of those people who thinks they've been microchipped with Morgellons disease, being poisoned by chemtrails, and that David Baldwin in Kansas is the actual Pope. And you can believe all these things. And you did that to yourself, right? So it's understandable why people will cede this ability to determine truth to authorities, because a lot of people can't handle that.
It's scary to figure out what truth is.
Very scary. And you're not, like, none of us are really qualified to do so. Self included. But the thing is, you're as qualified as most anybody. That's the good truth, and also the scary fact is that you're about as good as it gets, buddy, listener, lady. Like there are people smarter than you, there are people smarter than me, but they're not like astronomically so.
Yeah.
It's not like the difference between like a human and a dog.
And don't be wowed too much by their intellect anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
If you got to pick who to listen to, I'd pick somebody who is wise rather than somebody who is highly intelligent.
Yeah. So that's the scary truth, is like, you're about as good as it gets, listener. Like, look, I don't know, look around, you're it, and so I understand why people seed it to other people, cede this ability to authority. In some cases, they should. It's for their own good. But that is also the negative side of that, is that is how you get brainwashed. And like I personally, the way I ride that fence is I don't give belief over to things unless I understand them. I don't mean I understand them all the way through, but I see like how it could be that it worked. I don't have to know all the details. Like I respect authority and various authorities, and I respect expertise. But if you're really an authority, and I say like, yeah, but what about X? If you can't explain it in a way that is like, okay, and instead you start saying, you got to believe it because I'm an expert, that's a red flag that you're talking nonsense and trying to control my mind for some ideology. And so I will, there's a lot of things I just say, I don't know, or if people are trying to tell you something, it's like, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is here, and that's fine too. But so one motive is getting you to not believe your own mind, and that's to control your will and your mind, and to make you a mental slave. Another motive, and I would say this is a motive that is pervasive in all of science and modernity, which is to destroy totally even the smallest crumb of the idea of the sacred or the transcendent.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So you see this in all areas of science. Like in neuroscience, it's everywhere. It's like, well, you sure are just like a push button thing, a machine, really.
Chemical bag.
You're a chemical bag. You're a computer running wetware instead of hardware. But still just a computer. Like love isn't real. It's just a chemical in your brain, bro. We put some more of that chemical in there. We use a little instrument to poke around and press on the right area of your cerebral cortex, and you'll fall in love with a cactus. Meaning isn't real either, or happiness or joy. It's all just chemicals in the brain, and we can, with an fMRI, we can poke those spots and make the things happen, and we can make you think you heard God if we poke the right spot of your brain, and we distilled happiness down into a pill. Take it. Yes, this is a bit like Soma in the script from Brave New World, but don't worry about that. That's a conspiracy theory. Just take the pills. And you see this in social sciences, social studies, right? Which isn't a real discipline, but, sorry, it is not. Everything is just a social contract. Everything.
Yep.
Gender is a social contract. Nationality is a social contract. Right and wrong are social contracts. Beauty is a social contract. Family is a social contract, right? Everything is just artificial and based on nothing, and we can and should do away with it and replace it with something else that's quote-unquote better, although somehow their version of better is not a social contract, and that's always real. It's evolution, biology. Everything is doing this, like trying to destroy, like, you're worthless. Like, evolution's a big one. Like, life is just random, You're here. You're literally just an accident. Nobody made you or cared. Ultimately, nothing cares for you. The universe is indifferent to your existence. It would even be better if it hated you, but it doesn't. It just doesn't even know. It doesn't care. And like I said before, I think I've said this before, but if you wanted to tell the gospel to people in our time, you would do well to just counter that idea as a start. Like you want a one-line gospel for people today. Here goes. Quote. Just say this. The God that made the universe knows your name, knows your face, and cares. Like that in itself is revolutionary to most people. Yeah. Right? That would be such a breath of fresh air. Just start there. Like you don't even have to go to all the story. Just like, look, God knows who you are and cares. And people, that is like, what? Because people, the whole line they get from preschool through college and beyond is nothing matters. You're an accident. You're an animal. You're a monkey, basically. Squeeze whatever fleeting pleasure you can get out of this life because it's nothing but a sprint from the nursery to the crematorium, and either side is bordered by eternal blackness. As one of the great poets of our time said, you and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals. Let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. I mean, that's the line. That's filtered down into the culture, And so it's just...
I was told today that human meat will be on menus in restaurants in our lifetime.
Yeah.
And at first I balked at it, but then quickly said, no, it will be, because every single bit of ethical hardware that we need to make that happen is already in place.
Yeah. Every bit. Because why not? You're just an accident. What's it matter?
Yeah.
What's it matter? We can give you some drug that makes prion disease not a problem or something. It'll be fine. I mean, the mad cow disease. Just we figured that out. It's just nihilism all the way down. Or like the song I sang last week by Sturgill Simpson. It's the attitude. He says, "Don't waste your time on nursery rhymes, fairy tales of blood and wine. It's turtles all the way down the line. It's just nothing built on nothing built on nothing."
Yeah.
And Sphere Earth, maybe, would be the crowning jewel of this if it weren't true. The crowning jewel of nihilism. Like, okay, ancient man used to look up and see the gods and the stories written in the sky and the stars. That's not what's up there. No, what's up there is nothing. Nothing forever. It's a nothing forever in an eternity. It's blackness that never ends, an empty void in which no one can hear you scream. I mean, think about that. That was really the line they used to say. They still do. In space, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah.
You're in space and no one can hear you scream.
Like, why author a concept that makes people feel so cosmically alone and hopeless when they were like, if you like lay in bed and think about that phrase, it could just drive you to hopelessness.
I mean, yeah, think about that. No one can hear God. If he's up there, he can't hear you scream through the void of black. Your pain, your anguish,
and that's the message that science has for you.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can have this discussion without bringing up the things like the geocentric model of the solar system too.
Yeah,
just because of the meaning of that.
Yes,
is so profound.
It's so profound. I mean, it's like you're literally in a pale blue dot floating in nothing without direction.
Yeah,
as Pink Floyd said. I mean, think about how much this is filtered down into the music. The line like a generation lost in space with no time left to start again. Or John Popper, a blues traveler, he had this nihilism line. There's a multitude of stories, some is clean and some is gory, but there is no need to worry if you're sold or if you're bought. We're just spinning on some granite that we'd like to call a planet. It's like, well, whatever, we're just spinning out of control. Literally the message is we're spinning out of control in infinite nothing for no reason. Spinning out of control in infinite nothing for no reason, and if you scream, no one will ever hear you.
And it feels like
couldn't get more nihilistic. You couldn't.
Yeah, but people are trained to feel embarrassed to object, and it's not even, you don't even have to object to the physics arguments.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to object to the moral statement that lies behind it, or that those physics arguments come with.
Yes.
They're not separable.
They're not
or
separable.
At least we haven't figured out, I think, how to effectively separate them yet. Like even if all the physics are true,
yeah.
How do we not get the poison pill in that birthday cake?
Yes, exactly. How do you not get the poison? So that's the second motive, is to just like, look, it goes along well. It's just to tear down and to destroy any form of like hope or like belief in love or goodness. I mean, death itself can't be darker than space. It's like think about like this again. The songs, like I'm just thinking like the culture has produced. Like Death Cab for Cutie. They said, if heaven and hell decide, they both are satisfied, and illuminate the nose on their vacancy signs. If there's no one beside you when our souls embark, I will follow you into the dark. And millennials and Zoomers will sing that song and then be like, yeah, but space, woo! It's like, that's just as dark. Like, it's even worse, actually. Like, seriously, like, if you take space travel and relativity to its conclusions, you can reasonably get to a place where you become forever and eternally disconnected from all the rest of time and space. Like, you could go over the event horizon, which is the horizon of events. Like, events happening past that limit can never, ever, even given infinite time, because you're going faster than the expansion of the universe could catch up to, could never, even given infinite time, ever affect or connect to anyone else ever. That is at least if you die, just you were still in this timeline. I mean, like, the space is even worse. It's like they've invented death too.
Yeah.
You know, like how could we be even more alone? What if we were cut off from all of the universe and all of time so that we basically never existed? Okay, so that's... But also, see, and this is like, it goes back to like the mind trick thing where they get you to agree with both things, because it's that, and then it's also, it's infinite nothing, but it's also infinite possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's an infinite nothing forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But also, like, there's maybe like crazy civilizations out there with like wormholes and like Dyson spheres and aliens with time travel. You know, you go around a star somewhere, and also there's nothing there forever and everything's an accident. But also everything could be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of conflict of these two contradictory things just breaks people's minds, you know? And so that motive, like, you know, you remove God, you remove transcendence, you remove even the possibility of those things, and then you say, you know, we are how you get to heaven. We can take you there in a rocket in the future one day if you're good little boys and girls who do exactly what we say. Elon Musk is going. Jeff Bezos is going. That weird guy with the hair from Virgin Galactic is going. Don't you want to go? Well, you better. Because that's where hope for I mean, Elon Musk said this the other day. He said space represents hope. They've replaced it's the thing at the Indiana Jones when he took the skull off and tried to replace it with the bag.
Mm-hmm.
But then the stone keeps rolling anyway because it doesn't work. And that's a heck of a mental torture. I mean, it's mental and emotional abuse on a scale unknown. You know, like, they teach this to children, and then these people grow up and they're just broken. And that's why it's like, don't be mad at all these people, like these Redditors, because they've been put through a state of mental and emotional torture, probably unrivaled since the dawn of time. And that's not hyperbolic.
Yeah.
People today are insane by design. Like, they're broken by design. I mean, I went through this. My entire, I would say, 19 to 32 years old. 19 to 32. Was me dealing with these issues, like, and the depression, and sometimes very dark depression, and despair, and loneliness, and isolation, and the meaninglessness, you know, of if these things are true, then like, you're just lost. It's a generation lost in space with no time left to start again. Like, there's nothing you can do. And so a solid 13 years, like, battling through these issues, largely alone, honestly, because there existed and still exists nothing in the institutions, no elders really, to anything to really like take on these questions in an intelligent way.
Yeah.
There are a few people, and thank God for them, but there's by no means the majority. And, you know, at the risk of sounding like hubris, this is hopefully why this show is here, to help people get through that and get through it faster. And hope not only get through it faster, but just get through it at all. I mean, like, I've seen people lost down this hole forever, and they never get, like, people commit suicide. You know, a friend of mine dealing with despair largely from these issues took his life. You know, people were like, they give themselves over to weird sexual degeneracies. Others have decided, you know what, screw it all. I want to die and I want to feel something. And maybe if I just do some killing and they went into the military for those reasons, they told me afterwards, and tried to blow people up. And some of them had their legs blown off. I mean, it turns out your beliefs about the cosmos and your place in it are actually super important. You know, and like, and if that's wrong, if that's off, if that's making you feel that nothing matters, then that's going to have ripple effects that are pretty big. So that's why they would lie. You know, there's some motives for why they would lie. You know, and so that out of the way, the motives. Let's get into the fun stuff. Like what are the flat earthers actually saying? You know, what is all this stuff? Because it is fun, because they're clever little minxes. The flat earth people.
That's the way I think of them.
They're clever little minxes, and
cute little
like
noses
them.
And whiskers.
Yeah, and look, like I said, they might be right. I'm not gonna tell you what I think right now. They might be right. They literally might be. Who knows? But first, let's get the model straight. All right. So most people do not actually know what the flat earthers are claiming. They think the flat earth people are claiming basically that we're in the solar system that we're in now, like normal, right? Imagine, let's go vaporwave for a minute, and you're in your classroom in third grade.
Mm-hmm.
And your teacher has Velcroed some images she got out of a kit of the planets onto the wall. Right?
Okay.
And the 9 planets, now 8, Pluto, R.I.P., revolve in peace. Right? The image of, and they think that like, okay, the third planet it's exactly the same, but the third planet is just flat.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what they're saying, right? That's obviously silly, because they're what they have is they have the solar system model, and they just throw the flat Earth in there, and it brings up all sorts of attendant questions like, oh, if it's flat, wouldn't it be daylight all the time? Herp-a-derp, because it's not rotating out of the sun. Or if it's flat, where's the edge? Herp-a-derp, right? That's not what the flat Earth people are saying. The actual map and the shape of things, as purported by the best guesses of the flat Earth community, is rather that Earth is not a planet at all. Planets are in the sky. We're not in the sky. They are the wandering stars, the planetos, right? Earth is more like a realm. It's like first of all, the place we live is a flat plane, a disk shape, with the North Pole at the center of the disk. And notice how clever this is, because it still works. The maps, like the compass, still work. If you go north from anywhere on the disk, you still go to the North Pole. And this Antarctica is a ring around the edge. And so if you go south in any direction, you still hit the South Pole. You still hit Antarctica, just like you do on the globe. It's very clever.
Yeah.
Right? And so the flat plane is a disk with the North Pole at the center. And the sun and the moon are not large and far away. They are sort of small and relatively close. Right? And they move and spin above us, as do all of the stars on fixed paths. Again, exactly as it looks like they do. Like you could imagine maybe an LED over a table, like a few inches, and that circle of light coming down. If you spun that in a circle around the table, that shining light is basically daytime. And then the lesser light, being another one, the little gray, silvery LED going around behind it, it would be the moonlight. That's basically what they're saying. Now, that is a bit wacky, sure, right? But I'm just telling you the actual model that they're proposing, and not like the one that you might presume they're proposing if you never looked into it. There is no edge, because Antarctica is not a continent per se, but essentially it surrounds the disk with ice in all directions, and it goes on for quite a long ways, maybe forever. No one's sure. But it's convenient that no one lets you travel to Antarctica, because you actually can't. That is weird. The Antarctic Treaty was signed by almost all of the major countries in the world, and they all agree that no one can go there except to a couple of little spots just on the coast. When you get on a boat from Chile and you go south, and you can get off and say, hey, I'm in Antarctica, and then you can get back on and go back home. No one else can go there. You can't go on an expedition there. You can't do anything there, and flights never go over Antarctica, even though if you look on your globe at home and you say, what would be the fastest route from South America to Australia? It'd be right over the South Pole, and it'd be safer, because at least it may be cold, but if you landed, you could land on land and not in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and drown. But they don't ever do that, even though it's a lot longer. Why is that? I don't know. But you can't go there, and they say you can't go there because it's maybe an infinite, they don't know, but it's just sort of infinite coldness, and it's cold because the sun's not there. Basically, the sun is spinning over us, right? And it's melting a puddle, like a little earth puddle, in this infinite sheet. It's a weird model. I'm not saying it's not, but that's what their model is they're proposing. It's not what you might have thought, right? And some flat earthers claim that there may be other sun things out there beyond the ice that are melting other earth puddles out there. And maybe that's where aliens do come from. Like they do come from another world, quote unquote, which is another earth puddle beyond the ice. It's a bit wacky. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just telling you what they're actually proposing. So again, appreciate how ingenious that sort of model is. Everything still works on this model. Isn't that interesting? Navigation still works. The sun and moon still go around the same way that you've seen that they do. All the stars go around. If you go south, you hit Antarctica from anywhere. If you go north from anywhere, you hit the North Pole.
So is the North Pole elevated in this model? I mean, I'm trying to explain the complete darkness of night if the sun is really just over on the other side of the disk.
Yeah, that's a question that a lot of people come up with. Well, and that is just they would say, look, if you hold an LED over like a few inches above a table, you can see where the light is, and if you stand way over there, the light's not there. And because the light's not there, if you were standing there, you couldn't see it. And that is actually true if it's large enough. Like because if you imagine the sun is close and not hot, like not 90 million. Of course, if it's 90 million miles above, you'd see it from everywhere. But if it's close to the Earth, and I forget exactly what they say, they've calculated it, then you wouldn't see it from everywhere.
Okay.
That's how that works. And so here's a couple of questions. And yes, to your point, the North Pole is in many of their minds elevated because it's basically like the Garden of Eden. Like a lot of people don't know Garden of Eden. There's a lot of there's a lot of tie-in with biblical fundamentalists in there. You know, I'm not saying that for the good or bad. There's also a lot of tie-in with Islamic fundamentalists that are flat earthers. But people that have this hold to that vaguely Genesis depiction of the world. And most people don't realize, not even most Christians, because they don't read their Bible, is that the Garden of Eden is actually a mountain. The paradise, it says that not in Genesis directly, but in Ezekiel talking about Genesis. It's a mountain, and at the top, because the earth rose to meet heaven, right? It rises to meet where God is, and then God comes down, and that's where he does his. That's where he makes man to be the mediator between heaven and earth. But then they get cast out down from paradise into the lower world, whatever. So, and the axis mundi, they would call it the soul, like the center of the world. The axis of the world would be the North Pole, right? Which is now not in its former state. Take that what you will. Okay. So what are some of the little games they like to play? Well, okay.
I would like to also point out that this is a non-dualistic model of the Earth.
It is. In fact,
it doesn't have two poles.
That's correct. That's correct. It doesn't have two poles. But it is sort of dualistic because if you actually look at like the map of how the sun and moon go around, like imagine the sun is a white dot and the moon is a black dot.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
It's the yin yang symbol going round and round.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that interesting? It's the yin yang symbol, and they account for the seasons because the sun and the moon they make tiny spots. So like their position goes back and forth a bit over the disk, and to make like little if over the whole year it makes a little spirograph thing.
Okay.
Right. So that's how the seasons happen. Okay. And anyway, so here's some of the games they play. And maybe they're not games. Maybe these are serious. But I bet my point is, I bet most of you don't know the answer. So you believe something and you don't even know why, which is a sign that you may be brainwashed. Just saying, think about it. So, think about it. Okay. Why don't you fly faster? Like if you get in a plane, you go from... So the Earth is rotating. Let me make sure I get this right. Sun rises in the east, right? So the Earth is rotating from, what would it be? It would be west. It's rotating eastward, right? So the land is moving from west to east. Therefore, why don't you fly significantly faster flying from the east side of the country to the west side than you do from the west to the east, since the Earth would presumably be turning to meet your plane?
Wouldn't it be because the atmosphere is spinning along with the Earth?
Yes, that's what most people will say, right? And then they'll say, okay, maybe, but then why don't you notice? So the Earth is supposedly spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, basically, around. But, of course, it's a disk, so as you go up, or it's not a disk, but I mean, like if you sliced it into disks, like the equator is the largest disk, right? And if you go up, each consecutive disk in the stack is smaller. And therefore, since it's all making one revolution per day, it has to spin less fast. So at the pole, if you stand directly on the North Pole, in the globe model, you're not really traveling any rotational speed at all. You're just turning around, but you're not, you're just staying in the same spot. But if you're at the equator, you have to make the full circumference of the Earth per day. So if you fly from, say, Greenland down to, say, Miami, shouldn't the Earth seem to speed up beneath you? Shouldn't that matter? Because you're starting from a place where it's not spinning very much to going to the maximum spin.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Why not? And people say the same thing. They go, well, the atmosphere just moves with you the same all the time. And then they will go, well, isn't that convenient that you're basically saying it's moving all the time, but in just such a way that it's exactly like it would be if it wasn't. It's like, it's all moving, but it moves in such a way that it's just like it didn't move. Right? Or take a hot air balloon, or better, a weather balloon. Weather balloons go up really, really, really high. They go into the stratosphere. They go up about, I think, 20 miles before they begin to pop and they can't go any higher. Now, up there, the air, it is claimed, is roughly 10% dense as it is down here. So down at the surface level, where like planes are flying lower and stuff, you can say like, well, the atmosphere is moving with you, right? Due to like friction, it's being pulled down. It's all turning together. But as you go up higher and higher and higher, the air gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and that friction, like if it's 10% the atmosphere, the amount of friction to carry you along in that reference frame should be 10% of what it was. Be 90% gone. Right? And so you think at some point, wouldn't you decouple from the spinning a little bit? Like if you go up real high, there's almost no air now. I'm seeing the blackness of space with my hot weather balloon, and I'm turning. But what's keeping me still turning with it? And it's not momentum because the angular momentum is not really conserved in that way. Like if you spin a ball around on a string and you let it go, it flies off in a straight line from where you let it go. It doesn't continue to spin, So why doesn't it ever decouple a little bit? Like if you send up a weather balloon really high, and I've done this, I used to be part of a weather balloon, and then it will usually come down within like 20 miles, like it floats with the wind and stuff, and then pop. Why not?
It's an interesting question.
It's an interesting question, and frankly, I've never heard a good answer for it. To be honest, I've asked a lot of people about this one, and everyone's like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. But it's a bit weird. Again, it's one of these things. It's like there's no way you can ever experience it. It's a claim that they make, but there's no way you can ever get in a position to ever experience it at all. There's nothing, literally nothing you can do to feel the spin of the earth or see it.
Well, there was that guy that was going to fly with Jeff Bezos in his rocket in the near future, and he backed out.
Yeah.
Citing a scheduling conflict.
Yeah. Is this perhaps why the Concorde never stopped flying? Because it went so high and people were like, where's the curve? I don't know. But why isn't the Concorde flying anymore? Can we just not make it? I mean, the Concorde, if you don't know, was a big fast jet that they touted. It flew for like a month or two and they took it down. And it flew real high and real fast, a passenger jet, and you could get from Europe to America in like 2 hours. It was great. But it flew real high and real fast, and all the others go, yeah, well.
They keep saying they're going to bring that back.
They keep saying, just like they keep saying, we're going to go back to the moon. Don't worry.
It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. Why? Isn't that curious? So anyway, like I said, why doesn't the hot air balloon ever decouple? Never does. And they say, and you ask them like, okay, well, give me something. Give me an experiment I can do here. Like, well, I don't have to do space. I don't need something I can see on the ground. Show me that the earth is spinning, And they all go, and if you ask this question to people, they will say this answer. If you type it into Google, it will give you this answer. It will give you Wikipedia. It will give you the Smithsonian Institute. It says the same. They say Foucault's pendulum. Are you familiar with this?
No.
So Foucault pendulum was this guy named Foucault in the mid 1850s. And he came up with this supposed proof that you could do of the spinning earth. And all it is you draw a circle on the ground with the degrees 360, and sometimes he'd mark them off with the hours of a day, like 24 hours, like a big clock, right? And you hang the pendulum directly in the middle on a ball and socket joint so it can swing in any direction. Set it, and you make it really frictionless so it'll swing for a long time. Set it a swinging. And then as it swings, as the earth turns, it will begin to change direction over the course of the day, slowly, till it's back where it started 24 hours later. Okay? That makes sense?
Yes.
A lot of issues with that, though, when you think about it, that flat earthers will point out. Number one, if that's true, why are there any still pendulums ever? Like, if they just change because the earth is changing, then how does a pendulum ever still? Shouldn't, if you have it still and the earth moves, shouldn't it be rocking back as it tries to maintain where it was? Right?
Okay.
I mean, that's... the other thing is, if you actually do this, sometimes the Foucault pendulum spins the other way. Sometimes it doesn't spin at all. And also, if you give it even the slightest lateral motion, he was just doing this by hand, and they still just do this by hand when they do it. If you give it even the slightest lateral motion when you let go, which is very hard to not do, that will work itself out over the time and begin. And you know, so like I said,
so the results of the tests aren't really that consistent.
They're not consistent. Sometimes it spins the other way. It makes it seem like the Earth is spinning the other direction. Okay. Sometimes it doesn't spin at all. And then the other question is, but
what happens if you do it on the equator? Wouldn't that mean it wouldn't go round?
I think so. Yeah, but it's still but again, their question of like, well, then why is the chandelier hanging from my ceiling still? If it as the Earth moving, if it's going to continue to maintain where it was, shouldn't it be like rotating around in little circles? Doesn't happen. And I don't know. You look at the Smithsonian, and you're like, yeah, but I know that doesn't actually work. Like, you know, if you do it, people are like, sometimes it goes, sometimes it doesn't spin at all. And now it
seems like if you're trying to measure something that's almost a completely closed system, I mean, and here's I think is the argument here. You better come up with a more tightly controlled test than that.
The whole reason they said you couldn't feel the spin of the Earth in the plane was they said the whole thing moves with you and doesn't affect it. But then they say, actually, it does move when you have the pendulum. And then that it does affect it. And you're like, wait. Shouldn't the whole atmosphere be moving with the pendulum? And the building and the thing it's hanging from? So shouldn't it all counteract and we'd all be moving together and it wouldn't matter? And they say, because that's what they say about the plane, and like, but in the pendulum, then it doesn't matter. And then you're like, are you shifty Italian? You know, because there's that's how I'm just saying, you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, the whole atmosphere moves with us so that you never feel it when you're in a plane. Yes, the Earth is rotating under you at 1,000 miles an hour, but when you go to land, the landing strip doesn't move at all, so you can still do it. Even though if you're landing, it should, like, because you're all moving together and everything's moving together. But in this one case of the pendulum, that doesn't matter anymore. Right? I find that unconvincing, frankly, and I don't really buy it. Okay. Another thing they will say is, if we're moving all the time, really fast, around the sun, through the universe, around the galaxy, how is it that the North Star has been able to be our guide for literally since the dawn of time? It hasn't moved. If we've been rocketing through the universe at millions of miles an hour, shouldn't the North Star like not really be the North Pole anymore? Shouldn't it have moved a little bit? And the way they get around is like, well, it's just so far away that it didn't matter. It's like trillions of bazillions of miles away.
Yeah.
It's very convenient. It's like...
evolution occurred over 20 bazillion years.
Bazillion! It's just... Yeah. Everything is so far away and big that it's like that you could never, ever, ever see it at all. Right? But yet, the flat earther comes out and he says, no, look, the North Pole... and all the stars turn around in a circle. And if you do a time-lapse photograph of that, you'll see all these beautiful circles around that thing, which was put there by design for navigational purposes and to like show us things. And there it is, and it's been there since we've had recorded records, and people have used it since even before then for that time, and it ain't moving. And how is that? And then they say, okay, if it's 8 inches per mile squared, and what that means is you take 8 inches, and then so 1 mile is the curve of the earth. So if I'm standing, as I'm going over the ball, the ball should bend away from me 8 inches, right, at 1 mile. At 2 miles, you square the 2 miles 4. It's 8 times 4. It's 32 inches, right? At 3, it's 9 times 8. So, because as it curves away from you faster, right?
Okay, yeah.
On a ball. So, it's 8 inches per mile squared. So then you begin thinking about that and you go, that's actually somewhat significant. Like, I can see, if I stand on a mountain, I can see for like 100 miles. And that comes out to be like hundreds of feet of drop. And yet, that doesn't seem to be happening. And sometimes across Lake Michigan, you can see Chicago, which should be over the horizon, but you can see it. People take photographs of the thing. You can see it across Lake Michigan, and that's like at various points anywhere from like 50 to 112 miles across where they can see this thing, which should be a dip. It's at the nearest point of like 50 miles. Like I said, the Chicago should be 400 more feet over the horizon down than the tallest building, and yet you can still see most of the building. And they go, well, it's a mirage. That's really what they say. They say it's atmospheric lensing, and this is what people are saying because they're trained to say. And again, my point is, you don't know what atmospheric lensing is, almost certainly. The average person that says atmospheric lensing, you're just doing Star Trek technobabble.
Yeah.
You're saying, and you say, explain atmospheric lensing, and they go, blah, 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 blah. And my point is, you listener, probably, unless you're the exception, don't understand why you can't really explain the world, just like George Bernard Shaw said. At least the medieval person was like, yeah, well, the world is this way because it looks this way. And you're like, it is this way because I was told, and I can't explain any of it. I really can't explain the simplest thing about it. Not even, none of it. You know? Like when people ask me like simple questions, I just fall apart. And of course, they get into like other things like, because of course, when you begin questioning this stuff, you begin to question other things. Because if the sun and moon are actually quite close and small, then they don't work as they say they do, and then gravity and all this. So they start to get you to question other things, and they say, "Listen, the moon. How's the moon work? You ever think about that?" And you go, well, it's up there because of gravity, And they say, yeah, that's what they say, but. The moon is pulling the ocean up, right? It's the tides. And you go, yeah. Why are we not why don't we feel lighter when it's directly overhead? Shouldn't it be pulling us up a bit? Like, shouldn't we be able to like jump higher or something? I mean, it's pulling the whole ocean up. The ocean's pretty heavy. Yeah. You're like, But see, and I actually calculated this the other night. If you can use the Newton's formula of gravitation, which is the force in newtons, which you have to convert to pounds, I think is, what is it? It's like 4.2 newtons in a pound, I think. Anyway, the force in newtons is equal to the gravitational constant times the mass of one of the objects times the mass of the other over the distance between the objects squared. So I did that, and I thought, well, because this is a thought I had. If the moon's above you at nighttime, like over your head, right? In the daytime, it's on the other side of the earth, basically under your feet. So during the day, it should be pulling me down more, and during the night, it should be pulling me up. So I should have a weight difference between night and day, right? And I calculated that just using back of the envelope calculations, and I found that it was about, for my weight, I'm about 220 pounds-ish, a little less. For my weight, it would be about, it was a millipound. It was 3 millipounds, so 3 thousandths of a pound.
Okay.
Per day, which is not much, but that is measurable. Like, that's so many grams, right?
Like, you should be able to take a precise scale and do that. A calibrated weight and figure that out.
But I've never in my whole life seen anyone be like, well, this weighs a little more because it's nighttime.
Yeah.
Or daytime. Like, if you take a heavy object and you set it on a precise scale, maybe you do. I've never done this for a full 24 hours a day, but do you notice the weight go up and down a little bit? I've never heard of this being an issue.
I have the equipment necessary to run a test.
Maybe you do. You should test it. Maybe it does work. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I just never have tested it. But I do find it interesting. I've never heard of anyone bringing that up. Another thing with weight that you never hear about. So, if we're spinning around at 1,000 miles an hour, you would have a centripetal force pushing you out, right? Like if you are on a merry-go-round and you're going around, you feel like you're going to be flung off.
Yeah.
Right? It turns out it's not that big of a force because the rotational speed is, though it's 1,000 miles an hour, it is around its circle. It's one rotation per 24 hours, right? It's not super rotational speed, but so you would have the gravity pulling you down, and then there's a centripetal force throwing you out. So you'd have like a force vector going up, and then a bigger one pulling you down, and that would be your perceived weight. But then you don't have a centripetal force at the North Pole at all, so that would be gone. So you should weigh more as you go more toward the poles. And
good point.
Does that make sense? And so then I said, I've never noticed anyone being like, well, this pegged the scale at 3 grams here in Nova Scotia, but we moved it to Mexico, so now it's 2.7. I've never heard of that happening. But it should, right?
I find of the arguments put forth so far, I find that one the most interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really neat.
I'm just, when people weigh things to ship it, and things, and they ship it all around the globe, it's never like, well, up here in Nova, we got to factor in the Earth spin. That Amazon doesn't do that for shipping. Another thing that is silly is when people are like, well, snipers have to put in the Coriolis effect. That's how you know. Yeah, but no, they don't. No one has to do that. Long range. Let me know if you do. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you worked on a naval ship and you were trained to fire the guns like miles over like 20 miles away or wherever they far, right? But I don't think you do. I think you just point them in that direction and use regular trigonometry. And you don't have to calculate for the spin of the Earth. Because I don't think your average grunt could do that.
No, they couldn't. And things like windage would be, such an overwhelming factor as compared to that.
Yeah, but people say that they need to do this.
Yeah, I know. I've never met anybody that's actually done that.
Also think about how it would be one thing if it was a normal factor, but like it would be different if you were facing northeast or southwest or what latitude you were at, like if you were near the poles or not. It would be so complicated. You would need a computer to do it, and people have been making these shots since way before they had computer assistance. And there's no sniper out there going, okay, give me the wind. Right, 7 miles an hour. Distance, 2.3 miles. All right, spin of the Earth. It doesn't happen, right? It's like, what's the spin of the Earth? What? What's the spin of the Earth? What direction are we facing? Northwest? Coriolis effect. What hemisphere are we in? That never happens. Right? That's not how sniping works.
Well, presumably you could work that out ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but like I'm pretty sure that's not part of sniper school.
I don't think it is either.
I mean, if I'm wrong, I've never been to sniper school. If I'm wrong, and they do tell you, like, figure out your latitude and longitude and which direction you'll be taking the shot in, because that matters a lot, because if you're facing northeast as opposed to be totally, and then what hemisphere you're in and what season and what time of, and then factor that into your shot. Let me know if you have to do that. Maybe you do. I don't think you do. Right. So there's a lot of and another thing, I brought this up, like when you take a ball, like the moon supposedly reflects the light. So their model is that basically the moon is exactly what people used to think it was. It's a lesser light, the same size as the sun, and it spins around and it gives off its own light. It's self-illuminating. And they say, well, look, if it was a ball reflecting light, if you shine light on a ball, the ball has a hot spot. Because they always do. Because part of the ball is nearer to you than the other parts that are falling away.
Yep.
And the moon has no such hotspot. And then people, I've brought this up to people because I like to argue the devil's advocate side, and they say, well, it's because the moon isn't reflective enough. They say, but wait a minute, the whole point of the moon is that it's reflecting the light of the sun. What do you mean it's not reflective enough? This is the thing. This is my point. When you get into this with people start talking in circles, which means they don't understand what they're saying, and they've been brainwashed into a mode of belief without actually understanding any of it. And I bet for a lot of our listeners that includes you. So, maybe think about that. And think about what other areas of your life might that be true in. And why is it 6.666 feet per mile squared, 66,600 miles per hour around the sun, and 66.6 degrees of tilt? That to me is a bit like, whoa. And then, why is it that you've never can experience these things? What if there's no philosophical and social and metaphysical terra firma because they took away the actual one?
Ooh.
And what if things are actually just how they see? Here's a radical idea. What if things are like they look like? and then could you live in that? Could you even, because frankly that'd be a little scary. If I really believed the earth was flat, and some days I wake up and I go, no. Why can I not jump a little higher under the moon? But what if things are exactly as they look like? And would that be, because if the world was really flat, that means that really points to something else. And that means a whole lot of knock-on effects for what you have to do with your life. And could you even really stand that? You know? So this is, just think about it. Just think about it. We're all just spinning on some granite that we'd like to call a planet.
That show baked my noodle, man.
I know. There's more to the flat earth thing than people give credit for. Like, they're not like retarded. They're saying like, you don't understand this. And everyone's like, yes, I do. No, I don't.